What's up, our Dark Souls? I don't really post here that often, but yesterday there was a certain review posted that I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. I don't want this to be wholly a response to that, but I feel like I had to make some response from it, so here we go. I'm just playing the game right now, trying to see how far I can get in about 20 minutes. Let me set my watch for that real quick. And yeah. Dark Souls is one of my longest played games ever. I think it's actually tied for right around longest with Skyrim. And yeah, it took me a long time to learn the game, just like everybody else. But over around 300 hours or so, I've done a lot of really interesting things with the game. I've done your classic SL1 runs. I've done your I think I did a no death run, but that failed miserably. I've done some challenge runs, randomly generated ones, of course, and all that sort of stuff. So I would say that I have a little bit of experience. I did some speedrunning work about a year and a half ago. Managed to get down to under 2 hours. Nothing special, but whatever. So obviously, the first talking point that everybody has to say is that it's a shit PC port. That's true. I do have DS Fix. I have DS PvP Watchdog. DS Fix, I recently upgraded my monitor, and I couldn't quite figure out how to get it to 1080p. So you're looking at the at 1280 by 720 upscaled onto my monitor right now. But it doesn't matter. DS PvP Watchdog, I haven't updated that in a while, so it's giving me errors every time I log on. That's fine. One of the main complaints of that review is that Dark Souls is fundamentally a broken game. In some aspects that's true, in some aspects that's false. Me choosing most of the time to follow speedrun strats, it does bring out some of the more broken aspects in that game, or in this game rather, but that's fine. It doesn't change the way that a first playthrough is going to happen for most people. So, I'm not too worried about it. I'm not too worried about this game being fundamentally broken enough that the way I experience it is so different from the way a first playthrough experiences it. That whatever. Something else worth talking about is my first playthrough. My first playthrough, I broke the #1 golden rule of Dark Souls. I got to the Hellkite Drake Bridge before I consulted a guide. I got there, and it said, "Oh, you should pick up the Drake Sword." So I got the Drake Sword. Big mistake on my part. And I also ended up following that guide about halfway through Blighttown, and lost out on a ton of the first playthrough experience. At that point, I also watched a few speedruns, a few any% challenges, mostly from Lobos Jr. I know a lot of you guys know him for his shield-only runs, and some more of his slow runs, Dark Souls 2 and 3 stuff. So at that point, I had the game thoroughly spoiled for me. I knew where to go, I knew what to do, roughly how to do it. And that's just kind of an experience that I wish I could, wish I'd go back and change. So, with that out of the way, the PC port out of the way, with my first playthrough out of the way, I have a list of talking points up on the second monitor, and I'm just going to go through them, and give them about as much time as I want. See how far I get. So the first one on that list, I have area delineation. Again, referencing that review that, was it, VooXID posted. He said that a lot of the color scheme is drab, greens, browns, that sort of thing. And he's right, to a point. No, this was addressed in the comments to that post as well. But throughout a lot of the Undeadburg and he was in the depths, you do see a lot of that sort of that gray, brown, drab. And that's tiresome to look at after a while, it's true. But that completely ignores the other areas. Anor Londo, Duke's Archives, to a much lesser extent, Lost Izalith and the Demon Ruins, but those aren't very popular, as I know. My point in all of this is that Dark Souls does an extremely good job of delineating each and every area that you can play through. This comes as no surprise to many people, and that reviewer even said it himself in his video. The art direction of Dark Souls is, frankly, amazing. It's some of the best and tightest that had been released up to this point in gaming. So that bears credence to the argument that Dark Souls is a good game, and not to see described as fundamentally flawed piece of trash. But we don't care much about this game, so we're just gonna stop talking about it. Like I said, area delineation, you can very easily tell whenever you enter a new area in this game, even without the little pop-ups that show up saying, oh, Undead Burg, Undead Parish, Depths, Catacombs, whatever it is. Even in the Depths and Catacombs, Demon Ruins, Lost Izalith, you can very clearly tell that you're at a boundary of an area, and you see something like that. And you see the way that the art style changes, and the way that the architecture around where you are changes, and that's just a very, in my opinion, beautifully well done example of how to inform the player that where they are is different from where they were before, which is a key element in game progression, it turns out. So, kudos Dark Souls on that. Next topic. Focus on rewarding patience. This is something that isn't seen in very many games, both before Dark Souls 2012 and after. The idea that patience is also a game mechanic. I'm sure that a lot of people will be quick to bring up the sort of quintessential grinding RPG of the mid to late 90s and early 2000s, I suppose, saying that those games rewarded patience because you had to be patient, otherwise you couldn't play them. Yes and no. I see it as two different kinds of being patient, whereas in those games, it's patience in sort of interacting with the game on its own level, meaning you're subject to the way that the game makes you play it. You have to do the grinding, basically. In Dark Souls, it's more a relationship of you grinding down the game, at least the way I see it, where it's much less about grinding out souls so you can get levels, so you can be that much stronger than all your enemies. It's much more about being patient so that you learn the enemy's tactics and you can address them at your own pace. It took me, I don't know how many tries to even learn that skip right there, but I did. I learned that if you go left, then there's always that chance, unless you take the exact right speedrunning route, that the boar is going to hit you. I learned that if you go right, you can still run up, jump off that platform before the undead closes that gate. The depth of tactics that you can assume and pursue in Dark Souls is amazing. Like I said, it definitely rewards patience. It rewards my patience. It rewards new players' patience, because there's always something more that somebody could learn. We're seeing that on the very top end of the scale in, frankly, Kamul's runs. Breaking 45 minutes on any percent is something that was thought to be almost impossible without kill and skip. But he put in the time, he put in the effort, and he said, hey, this is something that we can 100% do, so why not? Rewarding new players, that's also obviously easy to see. As a new player, switching from trying to grind out the souls from the Undead Hollows in the Undead Burg, that was something that I did to get levels. Now, I haven't leveled up once. I started as Bandit. You can argue that Bandit is a bit of an OP choice for melee builds, but whatever. Basically, Dark Souls assumes you start with no knowledge, and makes the game available to everybody. Everybody starts at the same level, and it comes down to the player to say whether or not they're going to put in the time and the effort to really stay up on the Dark Souls skill. I know you can parry this guy. I've never known the timing for it, so I don't. Instead, I just stagger him with the axe, which takes 3 hits. Pretty sure after this next stagger, he's going to try to Tringestus. Maybe not. Oh well. That's not critical to my point. But bosses are much the same strategy, where you say, okay, it's my job to learn this boss's attack. It's my job to learn this boss's movement patterns. And this sort of segues into the next topic I have, where a lot of people see Dark Souls and they try to brute force it, for lack of a better term. They try to walk in and say, oh, well, I've played games before. I think I'm pretty good at games. I'm just going to run in and kill everything, and that's going to be fine. There were other games, I know there were other games, that also, I didn't pick up that shard, damn, that also tried to prevent this tactic. Metal Gear Solid being one of the examples that comes to mind the fastest. A lot of Tom Clancy games are also very famous about this. Ghost Recon, Rainbow Six. They all have a focus on saying that if you run in and try to kill everything, try to destroy everything, we're just going to kill you. Now, like I said, that's not